Good day to you, partner. I'm Guy, and I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken kingdom.
Hey guys, Wheat Solo here, aka the Skeleton King. So the last video didn't exactly make me feel good inside, and I literally did forget until I was already doing it why I stopped doing Merc DPS like 5 seasons ago. It's because Crushing Blow is just too good. And the DPS checks will come back, but Rin is going to basically make a boss version of a dummy, and I'll see how much, if that's enough to nerf CB. He can actually remove CB from the game as a stat, which means it'll still be on the items you would use anyways, but then it won't actually do anything. And if we have to go that far, we might. That's kind of weird, because some items you would use only for the CB, so it kind of starts to tailor your gear in a weird direction. So hopefully the boss DR is enough. But like Crushing Blow is really good, guys, and that's why that like Uduars are so good early on. Act 5 Whirlwind Barbarian is so good. You just give him anything with Crushing Blow, and he Crushing Blows everything, and he's super cheap, besides randomly getting himself killed. All right, enough talk on enough blah blah blah. We're talking about Act 1 Physical Merc, and we're going to get back to that right now, I promise. So now what I'm actually doing is I'm doing the Den of Ren, and I'm actually doing it with a more typical Green Goblin setup. As you see, I have skill points not spent. I didn't actually show my skill distribution, so basically I just have all 1-point wonders. I have 20 points into CM. Just 1 point into curses, and then I have max blood golems, max golem mastery, and max revives. Now, I do have like random moon lords every once in a while, but I basically just tried to target the abominables. Why? They're one of the best CC summons in the game that also don't do DPS, while the thrashers, the big tree guys, thorned hulks, actually do some DPS, and so this way I can actually keep myself and my merc alive, because I'm not using any of those weird testing charms. This is actually just straight up gear. The character file was provided by NoRec. It's a very good Green Goblin setup. It is not perfect, but it's better than the gear I was using before by far. And I mean, you just go back to the beginning of the video. We got the 3-socket giant skull, the amazing Purgatory, the ridiculous demon machine. I have the option of another demon machine if I wanted to use it. And yeah, just absolutely ridiculous gear. Again, maybe missing a core or two, but more work than I wanted to put into it, so thank you, NoRec. And as you can see, that was the Purgatory version of the build. I was also talking to somebody else about it, and they mentioned that don't forget to test Fortitude, and the Fortitude test is coming right here. And they believe Fortitude is actually the best option for the build. Now, he did state this, though, unless you have a ridiculous Purgatory setup, and I would say that this video has a ridiculous Purgatory setup. And so, yes, the Purgatory version of the build beats the Fortitude version. But Fortitude is just... I don't like making it, because I think it's kind of a waste of runes. And I think you can get rare armors that are really, really good these days, and just put some jewels in them. But basically, let's say you're at the point where you want to upgrade your merc. You're not sure if you want to risk trying to get all the way to a ridiculous Purgatory, which could take you hundreds of runes at this point, assuming a few weeks have passed into the season where the prices of GG items starts to escalate above 50, then, you know, sure, make a Fortitude. It's really, really fucking good. And in fact, I actually like the Fortitude version more than the Innocence version. Now, Innocence actually clears the map at the second best pace, so it's behind the Purgatory version. I do actually try to proc the Innocence, by the way, with stomping on the enemies. I'm not just using it the same way as I did these other builds. That's part of the reasons why I got Abominables. If I wasn't going to actually have to stomp with Innocence, I probably could have just ran Blood Golems, because I needed like some amount of meat shields. But I realized when I was first starting this that just not having enough summons was going to be an issue for the Innocence version of the build, because she would just randomly die. I was even still using Testing Charms, so I was fine, but she wasn't. And so that's kind of where I got this little quasi happy medium where I have revives on all the builds. Again, not trying to get a DPS revive, just to keep her alive. And so here is the Innocence version of the build. And it does clear second fastest. But I want to say real quickly that Den of Ren is not a tier 1 or a tier 2. I would say it's closer to a tier 3 than a tier 1 or tier 2 map. Now, the monsters may not be the most dangerous. The density, I think, is pretty fair, but I wouldn't say it's like a, 200 density rare map, but maybe 100% density rare map. Although density in maps is kind of whack. You get what I'm saying? I think the density is good enough. But the mobs, they hit hard, and they're really, 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 really tanky. And so I don't think, although Innocence does beat Fortitude, I think I was slightly better at playing the build. I don't want to call it luck. The trash mobs are kind of trashy, and so luckily they do generally seem to die from the DM procs, and so that's kind of cool. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you're running tier 1s or tier 2s, I think there's probably no reason not to use Innocence at this point. I think just imagining certain maps where they have such frail mobs that they die in, less than 10,000 damage easily. I'm saying like easy, like that's like the tankiest mob in the map is dying at 10,000 damage with all of your sources of DR, right? As a necromancer, it's probably dying at 8,000 because your DR is very consistent. I think just going with Innocence is just going to overall increase the reliability of your clear speed. If you're using a demon machine and you want to run tier 1s or certain tier 2 maps, then I think Innocence is just going to be best. And so I'm just going to say that now. But I think if you want to keep your options open, especially with max life, I'm not saying Innocence can't run tier 3s. I know people do cows with that version of the build. I don't think it's right, but I think it works. Again, I'm not using summons that do DPS. So something that all these builds would benefit from is having some actual DPS from the summons. And they do DPS. Some people seem to say, oh, it's just the Demon Machine Act 1. It's like, she's insane. Okay, no one's not going to say that. But mercs do dish out DPS. The summons. These builds don't benefit from that. So if you have really, really, really good summons, then yeah, I can see it. But the thing is this, I think it's way easier to position yourself and your summons not stomping in the middle of the pack, barring the fact you're doing what I would suggest, which is like Fire Golem's council members, which I think is a really sick idea, and I'm going to do that at some point with the Act 1 physical merc with Innocence. I just wonder how that would compare with the more typical Act 3 Holy Shock version of the Optimal Summoner. So that's kind of my rant on Innocence, why I wanted to say that after these tests, I definitely think it's a solid option, if not the best option for certain maps. But if you can afford Purgatory, that's super, super cool. It opens up max life tier 3s and different playstyles. And then, of course, Fortitude is like the happy middle ground where your merc still does juicy damage, but you're not relying on either becoming super rich or just getting lucky early in the season by finding somebody willing to trade a really good Purgatory or really good jewels. Because not only is the gear going to get really, really expensive, the jewels are going to get more and more expensive too. So yeah, keep that in mind. And what's this last version of the build? Unfortunately, it's the Faith tmight version. And again, just like Innocence, I think gets a caveat, even though Innocence had the second fastest time. Faith tmight gets a huge caveat, because the only gear change I made was I put a stone on. I probably should have put at least a whiz spike on as my weapon just to get a higher SCR breakpoint. I doubt it would have changed much, but the caveat is, when you put Faith tmight on your merc, you get to enjoy way, way, way different options. And by the way, I didn't actually do a test of Demon Machine with tmight on the merc this time. I think maybe I should have, but I don't think it's a big deal, because the tmight is so much worse than the gear that was provided by my no-rec. It's still a good tmight. It's a +1 all-skill 2-socket tmight perfect rolls. So I put two 40-15s in it. I do hit the max IAS breakpoint with Faith this time, which is like 70, I think, with a level 15 Fanaticism aura. And so it's not like it's bad. It's just, you'd probably, just to compete with the other gear, you would need a 3-socket. Like, it's just facts. And yeah, it's just none of the gear compares with the other gear that was given to me by No Rec. So there's another caveat for it. But I just wanted to show it off because I still think Faith tmight Act 1 physical has a reason to exist, because you could go with Eternity main hand, you could go Grimm's Burning Dead main hand. It just opens up your own gear so much. And I really don't think you guys should talk too much shit on summons, okay? Yo, fuck mercs, skellies, 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 skellies. Okay, and by the way, also, I didn't kill the boss in this. I actually started to kill the boss with my best geared Merc, the Purgatory version, and I'm like, this is just too much RNG. Like, it's not worth it. So just make sure most of the mobs are dead. This was about a 3-minute clear. That's the video for now. And Skelly King out, guys.
Come
GG.
play with us, Danny. Forever